tira papa na papa ko ai ono le hiko le kitia to he mal malu kirunga i tama te penu te ka pa ki na ta so te ta ko fa ora ko te nei ko mo ta le ko mo mai ko te ko nei mo to aro ta ko ni te nei ta te ko ko mai ko te ta ki ka pa mo na ta mo ko e ki nei ki ni ma ta ki au te po nei po ki au pai na te le ki a ko e te atu ke ko te ta ringa pai ki ma tingi ma tu hei te ko ta te ko ka tu ko tōna parikāpui haki. Nā tō noki nā kaumātu ngā pui e noho noho nei ana ki kāina ai rū ngā marae maha ko te mōi pōte. Te tia tō kāro ka kāina tēne kia pui kia tō atu tau arawhatanga nā ki tanga ki runga ki ngā whānau e noha nei runga te ngā mate maha. Te niwa. Tia tō e te ariki kia hoi hea nei au nā ki tanga ki runga kia rata. Tēnei kanga. Ana pati ino e tēnei kia koe te atua pia no hota he nei kia mai ngia mātou tēnei rā a kia whakaangia a mātou nei pōrero a mātou whakaaro. Ai runga ngā kaupapa hora e nei ki mea tāpai. Tēnei te ino i ke kirimu tau mā tātou āmite.
Kia ora Gary, ngā mihi. Ngā mihi hoki kia tātou katoa, i o hoa i runga tēnei te whāri o tēnei te Manawhenua o Matamata-Piako. Kia koe hoki tāhau, ko tēnei tō hui tuatahi, me ki tērā atu hui i tai ati hui, tērā te koe te workshop, me ki te workshop, e ngare tēnei hui. Tō tātou te Manawhenua, te mihi ana kia koe. Kia koe hoki te Manawhenua, ngā mihi nui kia koe. Tai atu kia koutou, ngā kaimahi, o te roto te Matamata Council, Matamata-Piako District Council, e mihi ana kia koutou hoki, ali, kia koe hoki Nathan, nau mai, haro mai ki tēnei tō tātou te Manawhenua. Koutou katoa i open court. Kia koe hoki te kai tātoto, o tātou tekatari, i mi ana kia tātou huri no tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Apologies. We have our Deputy Mayor. James, any other further apologies? No? Leo, I think he's going to join us here. Kotama, is he already there? Morena, Leo. We only have the one apology. Move that apology be received, please. Thank you, Lady Tilma. Seconder, Gary. All those in favour? Say aye. Contrary, carried. Thank you. Are there any additional notice business? No. There's something to declare contract now. Yeah, it's on the agenda. Was there any declaration of interest? Contract of interest. Any members? No. In the confirmation of our previous minutes? Someone that was present at that meeting? So, thank you, Madam Mayor. Seconder? Yeah. Thank you, Wati.
I think I was there.
Were there any matters arising out of those minutes? If not, I'll put be moved and seconded. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Contrary, carry. Thank you. We'll go to our agenda. Our first item on our agenda is koe tuatahi.
Kia mai tātou. Tēnei noa te tautoko ami ko mihia, kia koe ki pāpā, ai o tūrua tu pātanei hui, I rau te whanamātapu ki tātua. Ki tō tātanei Manawhenua, te tiamana, te komiti nei, tēnei tingi kawatu. Kia ora, but yes, my report I will take as information to be received, as we have workshopped this previously, a few workshops now with the Te Manawhenua Forum heads of agreements to further be endorsed and recommended to council for approval. Any comments or questions?
Pātai kia tuatahi.
Sorry, Tuatahi, so what's the process now? When's it go to council?
There will be the next official council week. So I'm not too familiar which they is at this time.
Okay.
Pātai anu. Piti tuatahi. Gary?
So the finalised version of the terms of reference of the heads agreement have been distributed.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Okay. Is there a resolution? So, no. Thank you.
Just to endorse it.
Just endorsed.
What did we say? That the forum endorses the Te Manawhenua Forum 2023 Heads of Agreement of the attachment and recommends to council for approval. So we do need some a mover. Gary, you help to move that. Gary, seconder. Hinarangi, all those in favour? All right, contrary, carried.
Oh.
Our next item was is that you're going to be yearly. The heads, the district plan update.
Excellent. Morena, everyone. We are here to do a district plan update, but before I kick into our presentation, I have taken Nathan around to some of you before the meeting, before the hui, to introduce him. He is Nathan Sutherland. He's come from our resource consenting team and now has moved into the position of team leader for policy. So he will be presenting to you hopefully these district plan updates from now on. So in regards to the report that we've prepared, I would like to take it as read and just give some highlights in regards to what has been happening since we have written this report. Plan change 54 for Papakainga, which is to enable Papakainga within our district. The next step in regards to where this plan change is going, we're proposing to reinvigorate the iwi working group that has been the fundamental driving force behind this plan change. A proposed meeting date on the 29th of June, and that is to go over or to summarise the submissions received, as well as the further submissions, and also to seek the iwi working group to nominate some hearing commissioners that will sit on as the panel decision makers for that plan change. So we're proposing that on the 29th of June, and invites are going out shortly. In regards to Waharoa plan change, so that's to look at the zoning and development of Waharoa. Currently we've just seeking technical reports, and I understand that Warren Gumley, our archaeologist, is working with Ngāti Hawa and landowners to do a comprehensive archaeology of Waharoa, so both from the European side as well as the iwi side, and they've been in contact with landowners within Waharoa through Ngāti Hawa Iwi Trust. Plan Change 59, please feel free to jump in and ask any questions. Plan Change 59 is proposed to rezone approximately 40 hectares on Mangapira Road, Matamata. We're just working with Ngāti Hawa, Ngāti Hinarangi and Raukawa for recommendations of iwi commissioners that could sit on that panel. At this stage, it's looking to go to hearing around October, November this year. Private Plan Change 58, Avenue Industrial Park. So as written in the paper, it's proposed to rezone approximately 14 hectares of rural zone land to industrial zone land on the outskirts of Morrinsville. The update since this paper has been read is that council did accept the plan change on the 24th of May for notification. So this will be going out around the 15th of June for notification, inviting submissions. Private Plan Change 55, Pontera Waitoa. There is no further updates in regards to that plan change. We're still working through with the applicant the information. Hauraki Golf Forum. There are also no further updates from what is in the paper. The next meeting is taking place on the 12th of June. In regards to the National Planning Standards, I've actually got a presentation for you that I'd like to just run through, just to give you a bit of an update about where we are with that, and also mainly focusing on the Tangata Whenua, Manawhenua chapter. So hopefully everybody can see my presentation, and when I present, I like to stand, if that's all right. Yeah. Out the way. So what would we like to achieve, hopefully I've got a loud enough voice, what we'd like to achieve today is just to give you a high level understanding of what the National Planning Standards are. To look at what's proposed in the Tangata or Manawhenua chapter, some options of how we're looking to go forward with the chapter, and also our proposed next steps. So what are the National Planning Standards? The National Planning Standards were released by the government in 2019. It was a solution to a problem that was seen as all of district plans across the country were different. If you wanted to do a subdivision, it might be, well, it's Chapter 6 within our district plan, but it might be Chapter 10 within another district plan. Our residential zone's yellow, our rural residential is purple, but if you go to another district council, there'll be varying colours and varying places where you find this information. So the intention of the National Planning Standards was to get consistency throughout New Zealand, both district councils and regional councils, so that all of our plans and policy statements look the same. So if you're a contractor working in many different councils, you'll know that you go to this chapter and you will find this information. So what does it require us to do? It requires us to standardise our layout and formatting. We have to have standard chapter headings. We have to have consistent zone naming. So residential zone is across the whole of New Zealand. Medium density residential zone, low density residential zone. They'll have all the same naming. But also we get to choose from 25 colours for those zonings, and they are prescribed to us. So our residential needs to be yellow, our settlements needs to be this colour. So we have prescribed colours that we must use for each zone. So when do we have to do this? So the Act says that there was 3 implementation timeframes. The first one was within 1 year of the National Policy Statement, National Planning Standards coming out, and that was a digital capability, i.e. within going to our website, within 3 clicks, you needed to get to our district plan. So there was a few little very simple technology things that needed to be met. The second time frame is within 5 years, we need to reformat our district plan to these national planning standards. Then within 8 years, we need to have digital capability. So you could go in and search your property and it could give you all the district plan information. So there's actually 3 implementation timeframes. What we're presenting to you today is just the one which we need to change our district plan in the current format to the format prescribed under the national planning standards. So right at the beginning, there is an introduction and general provisions chapter, which sets out the foundational requirements or information that is required in our district plan. It also includes how our district plan works and its relationship with other planning documents and the plan definitions. There were 99 definitions that were set through this national planning framework. So that's for things like we use dwelling within our district plan, other people will use house, some people use residential unit. So what is the definition of a house? And if you actually even got all the district plans within the Waikato, there would be many different interpretations of what a dwelling is. So these definitions, or the idea behind these definitions, would be a house in Matamata-Piako is the same definition as it is throughout the country. It also requires us to have a tangata whenua or Manawhenua chapter, and this is what I'd like to talk to you today. The National Planning Standards contain a list of matters that may be included within this chapter. And it really prescribes that we must engage with iwi to develop this chapter. One of the key things is what is the name of this chapter? Is it tangata whenua or is it Manawhenua? The planning standard says that it can be either, but if there is no agreement, it shall be tangata whenua. So the matters that they've raised within these national planning standards that could be within this chapter is recognition of hapu and iwi within our district. The relationships between tangata whenua, Manawhenua and the local authority. Hapu and iwi planning documents such as environmental management plans and the like. Involvement and participation with tangata whenua and Manawhenua. Any joint management agreements, things like those. So we've had a look at this, and this is really just to give you a highlight of what we're looking at and sort of where we think we should be going with this chapter. And we're looking just to see any comments around that. So we looked at this chapter and we thought, well, a list of all iwi who exercise Manawhenua within the district needs to be included within that chapter. A list of all the iwi who settled their historic treaty claims against the Crown, and that's currently within our district plan. A lot of iwi settlement legislation requires that for us to have that within our district plan, and those that have, it is contained within our district plan. A description of the Te Manawhenua Forum and its function, and also our Māori Ward, which is recently Council has moved forward with. Reference to iwi planning and environmental documents, so environmental management plans, which I know a couple of you have got, or any other documents that you think are relevant to the district plan and our engagement, and general advice on consultation. So those are some of the things that we think should be within this chapter. Oops. I don't know why that's covered over, but so in terms of how we can move this forward, so this is something that we need to do. The government told us, but really this is a chapter for you. So it really comes back to how we can engage and get this right. One of the options we came up with was a draft chapter itself containing limited information. And the bulk of the information could be referred back to your own website. And having all the history of your iwi, which is on your more than likely on your website. So that's one option. We looked at what are the positives of just having, links to websites and just lists of information. It is short and succinct. It's comprehensive information available on web links, and it's always up to date. But I guess the cons of it is it's limited information within our district plan and really doesn't give the full picture of the iwi within our district. And the readers also would need to do further research or go to those links to find out who are the iwi within our district. An alternative option is, rather than just having links to websites of who our iwi is to include some information. And we spoke to Jill earlier just to make sure she was comfortable with us. But this is an example that we've taken from Timu's website to give some history around Ngāti Timutumu. So when we look at the positives and negatives around that, there's more information through the district plan. It gives a one-stop shop in terms of the iwi within our district. However, it will make the document a lot longer, and lots of engagement would need to happen to enable that. Difficult to maintain a balance between too much information and not enough, and where is that balance? Oops. Also, just wanting to note that this is the Tangata Whenua chapter, but this is just about in the general information, so it's at the front of the document. There is also other chapters that will deal with iwi matters. There's the historical and cultural values chapter, and that will contain regulatory provisions to heritage sites and sites of significance. So within our district plan already, we have a number of wahi tapu sites that will still be there, and that will be in the historical and cultural values chapter rather than in this Tangata Whenua Manawhenua chapter. And in the appendices, we'll have, like I've said, the excerpts of that Claim Settlement Acts, which we currently have within our district plan. So although they will likely be referenced in the Tangata Whenua Manawhenua chapter, the actual information of those settlement legislations will be in the appendices, which they currently are. We also have schedules which will list all of those wahi tapu sites. So that's really just a slide to give you an overview of how iwi matters will be incorporated in the new national planning standards. So kōrero, where to from here? Obviously, this is just a really high level of this. There needs to be further engagement. And we're just looking to get sort of some direction from you. Our idea is that we will engage with each individual iwi individually on these matters to understand where or the aspirations of each iwi to what they would like to see within this chapter, but really wanted to double check that you thought that we were on the right road or the right path there, whether you think that's something that we collectively need to have a workshop with the Tamana Whenua Forum to seek direction, or you're happy for us to proceed with each individual iwi, and in those two options go with whatever option is the preference for that iwi. And then the last one is we obviously we're on a timeline, so we are looking to kick off some hui in July, August, depending on the feedback we get from here.
Thank you, Ellie. I think we'll just open it up for questions, and particularly on this kaupapa, your presentation. Just open up to the floor. Are there any questions to Ellie?
Kia ora, Ellie. Thank you for that presentation. Just one of the things that occurs to me is a bit missing is some of the we've been doing around papakainga and how Manawhenua want to live and engage now, rather than looking just at those, the cultural heritage and the scheduling of it. And I'm not saying, obviously Matamata-Piako is working on that already, but just where does that fit within the plan? Where would you envisage that fitting within the plan?
Yeah, great question. So with the national planning standards, we don't need to go through a notification if we're just moving things around from one chapter to another chapter. However, we don't have a Tangata Whenua or Manawhenua chapter at the moment, so that is something new to our district plan. So this process is really just putting things in different parts of the district plan in accordance with the new format. In regards to papakainga, we see that sitting within our district-wide matters, because that's applicable over our rural zone. You would have some information in the rural zone, because our proposed provisions, if they do go through as intended, would be applicable to the rural zone. They'd also have their own chapter, which would be the multi-purpose zone, and that has those two precincts, Papakāinga Tahi and Papakāinga Roa. So they would be within their own zonings.
Further questions?
Good, Madam Chair. Just noting that there's 3 iwi that are settled in this collective, and the question of capability, capacity to be able to pull this information together on behalf of the iwi. Is there any consideration for that capacity to support the iwi to engage in this process?
Yes, so in regards to that, I do have a small budget to for our hui that would, if we go along the path of individual, to enable those engagements to happen, but it is a limited budget. I do, if I can ask a question through you, Madam Chair, has other councils been engaging with iwi for those iwi that are not just only in Matamata-Piako? Is there any engagement that's been happening with other councils in this space?
Yes. Yes, I think there is. The Hamilton Council.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. Yeah. So in short, Gary, yes, I do have a small budget to help facilitate or recognise that there is limited resources, and we are really stretched in a number of spaces.
Yes, so I think we would be interested. Ngāti Hau will probably have our own hui. We need to liaise with Lisa to set that up.
And yeah, I'm proposing to go through the Puna Pukari website with the nominated RMA people on that website to engage. If the Te Manawhenua Forum thinks it's best just to engage individually with iwi to make sure that the district plan represents their aspirations in terms of how much information is contained within the district plan.
Where did they come up with that name, the chapter?
Manawhenua or Tangata Whenua?
Yes.
That's, I understand there must have been a lot of engagement at Crown level. And this is what the standard, it was passed as a standard. So it's come down for all councils to name the chapter either Manawhenua or Tangata Whenua, and after engagement with iwi. But if there is no agreement, then it will be named Tangata Whenua as the national policy statement direction.
When we're talking about Manawhenua, excuse me, when you talk about Manawhenua, are we talking about those iwi within the Matamata-Piako District Council area?
Yeah, the 12 iwis, yes.
As far as you.
Yeah, 12.
What about those that are outside of the Matamata-Piako, you know?
So this is our district plan, so it's just the Matamata-Piako district plan. So it will just be those 12 iwis that are on the Te Puna Pukari website that have areas of interest within our district.
Any other pātai?
Ai pātai tāku,
Kia ora.
te tia tangata. So just a quick clarification around tangata whenua. Grammatically, is there macron there? Is that always supposed to be there, or is it just appear every now and again?
No, it should. I should have it correctly. Sorry.
And then it's further clarification to our tia tangata. The reference to Manawhenua, mana can be exerted in spaces where you no longer know. And so there's a comment around the 12 iwi that is situated here in Aotearoa. That's only tangata whenua because you're situated on the land that we're referring to, but the mana extends well beyond the boundaries that you live within. So I think grammatically or contextually, Manawhenua is a broader concept and wouldn't limit ourselves to just our region. So I think there are some concerns around the use of Manawhenua, but they're overlapping. So tangata whenua and Manawhenua would definitely cross over. So there's some questions there.
Excellent. And so the proposal is that when we have probably with each individual iwi that we'd be asking, is there a preference to use tangata whenua or Manawhenua for that chapter? And definitely appreciate it's not an easy, there is overlap between tangata whenua and Manawhenua. However, we're in a situation where it needs to be one or the other. So if we do have a preference, I'm happy to take that on board. That would be our preference.
Thank you, Andrea.
So, I'm hearing that there's some things that are kind of like collective, and things that might be better sorted with everybody together rather than one by one and then taking a vote, you know, or if one disagrees, you know, because there will be reasons, and I think it's a great thing to have a discussion on so everybody can achieve a consensus about it.
Yep.
And so there's things like the name of the chapter, and then how do you approach the information level within the chapter, that sort of thing that could be collectively discussed and worked on rather than just everybody having the same conversation, you know, 12 times, or you guys having the same conversation 12 times.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what others think, but it's just a suggestion.
Go to Gary.
Yeah, I'm of a similar opinion. I think we've had the same discussion that during the Popkainga discussions. And the reality that tangata whenua means all Māori who live in this district as well. So how this particular chapter would apply to those who will not be Manawhenua. So yeah, I think it's probably a good call to have a collective conversation around the naming of it. Then wondered if there might be another term that's more appropriate than Manawhenua. So are we bound by?
We are bound by the national planning standards, unfortunately. The government has said it has to be one or the other, and I don't have the scope to change that. But just to confirm, what I'm hearing is maybe we have a collective hui with the people sitting around the room to set some framework, sort of the naming of the chapter, and then after that go set some sort of framework, I guess, and then individually catch up with each iwi to look into the particulars within that framework that's set by the Te Manawhenua Forum. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yep.
Excellent.
You need to go quite quickly, eh?
Yeah, I've got a few months, so happy for it to be true engagement.
Kia ora, just for me with this discussion, in the interest of consistency, what you're outlining to us is that we could have a chapter in district plan that says tangata whenua, and we're all sitting around a table here of Manawhenua. You're going to have those two different terms throughout the whole district plan, where the Manawhenua Forum is involved, and where there's a reference to if it becomes tangata whenua. You know that there are iwi that are not present at the table, but you know that doesn't alter the situation that they have influence within the Matamata-Piako area. And you know, it's really just about consistency. If we're going to use two terms within a council document, it's going to look tatty.
I think the proposal is just to use one term, and it's about coming to a decision of which term that is, whether the chapter will be called tangata whenua or Manawhenua.
Yeah, I'm
which
just
I know
sort
these two.
We've just reviewed and reconfirmed the heads of agreement, and we're the Manawhenua Forum, you know.
Just to clarify though, this is the district plan, so would it refer to the Manawhenua Forum at all within it?
It is proposed that it talks about having any engagement we have with iwi. So within this chapter, we're likely to put any joint management agreements or anything like that, as well as the Te Manawhenua Forum, because that's how we, local authority is engaging with iwi. So yes, there will be reference within this chapter likely to the Te Manawhenua Forum, and also our Māori ward and all of the interactions we have, environmental management plans, all of those things that we need to get consideration under the Resource Management Act. So it's a combination of our relationships and documentation.
Any further questions? Go to Jill.
Well, I just going to say that I would support the workshop scenario, because all these things that are coming up we can talk about and come to a joint decision, but notwithstanding that individual iwi still have the right to have those hui as well if they want to.
No, thank you very much. That's very clear direction on steps forward. So thank you very much. Kia ora.
Thank you. Alika, any other part you in your earlier, are there any questions of Ali before she goes?
Any changes or anything? Awesome. Thank you.
Thank
Kia
you.
ora.
Someone move that the information be received, please. Ready to on that, second that?
Yeah.
Andrea, all those in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Contrary, carried. Thank you. Annual plan. April 2. Please do that, Laura.
I'm standing up for
Niall.
today.
Thank you, Niall.
Kia ora, good morning, everyone. So this report is just to give you an update on our policies and our annual plan. I'll start with the annual plan first. So the council over the past couple of months has been working through its budget for the coming financial year. That starts on the 1st of July. As a result of some changes to the budget, it's been identified there are some quite large budget pressures that council is facing, and as a result of that, council has gone out to consultation on its draft annual plan, and consultation was opened on the 8th of May and closed on Friday. So I've included a copy of the annual plan document. Submissions document, for your consideration. And so I would also just draw to the board's attention the various policies that recently went out for consultation, including the local alcohol policy and various other topics. The council held a hearing during May. And largely confirmed those particular policies that were up for consultation. Probably the one more significant change was with respect to the local alcohol policy. There was quite a bit of consideration and debate around the trading hours that liquor outlets can have, so particularly in respect of our off licences. The proposal was for off licences to be able to trade from 7 AM to 11 PM. So effectively allowing those supermarkets that wanted to trade a bit later into the evening, the ability to do so. There was quite a number of submissions on that particular issue, and the council have decided to reduce the trading hours so that for off licenses, it's not able to be sold after 9 PM, which is reflecting our current policy. So that's I think all, Chair. In terms of that update, but happy to take any questions.
Any questions of Niall? If not, I'll have someone move the information be received. Gary, seconder, please. Thank you. Adrian, all those, put the motion, all those in favour say aye. Contrary, carried. Thank you. And the second part to that. So 8.3, the Matariki reading, Heather. Thank you, Noel. Morena.
Morena, tēnā koutou katoa. I'm new on my te reo journey, so bear with me, please. Ko Ireland, Australia, te whakapapa mai, engari no Australia aho, I tupu ake aho I Rockhampton, ko Morrinsville, te kainga I Naiane, he pohono hapori whare puka puka aho, ko Heather Furnace toku ingoa, tēnā tātou katoa. So yes, I'm at the Matamata-Piako District Libraries, and I'm bringing before you some content that we are using for our winter reading challenge, which is based around the theme of Matariki. Just to make sure that we haven't included any information that is inaccurate. I provided in the agenda an attachment with our content that I also have available. Tuatahi very kindly encouraged me to add a disclaimer at the start that every iwi and hapu celebrate Matariki differently. And this is just some information that might be available. So that's one aspect of what we're doing at the libraries. The other element of what we're doing at the libraries at the moment is our story walk project, which is placing picture books. I don't know if anybody has seen them yet in Te Araha or Matamata or Morrinsville. So picture books that are mounted on stakes, and as you walk along, you read each page of the story. They've been at the Te Araha Lower Domain Walk, the Te Araha Wetlands, Matamata Centennial Drive, Morrinsville, the River Walk, and the new Lockerbie Estate. And we're looking at making a permanent structure in both Morrinsville along the new walkway in partnership with the Morrinsville Museum. And in Matamata, we are next week starting a trial at Swap Park, working with a couple of community groups there to put some there. And that's going to be a bilingual story walk. So yes, I'm coming before you, one, to introduce myself as our community engagement librarian. The libraries are looking at being more active in the community, forming partnerships and ensuring they become less colonised institutions and more true community hubs that are welcoming to Māori as well.
Thank you, Laura. Any Pakari?
Have we just acknowledged the 7
On that walkway.
The 7
stars?
7 stars for the Matariki Reading Challenge? Yes. I asked Tuatahi what he thought we should do. And he suggested we go with the 7. Doesn't open for a few weeks, so if we need to include the extra 2, we can.
No, that's good.
Hard, isn't it, when you get different?
I know, Hirangi, I know we talk about 9. Yeah, but you know, people don't.
So, yeah, Centennial Drive might be more.
So sorry, 2 separate things. Story walks, picture books that get mounted, and then the Matariki Reading Challenge is going to be the Tamariki read for 14 days. They complete 7 activities based around the 7 whetū, and each one has a little bit of information. So starting the education journey. If we need to include the 9, I can include the 9. The information I've pulled so far that was in the attachment, we were shared Christchurch City Libraries, Auckland City Libraries, and Te Wānanga or Aotearoa. Pulled bits of information from each of them with their permission to create
Yeah, some people celebrate 7 and some
Yeah.
9.
That's the disclaimer though.
Yes, so that was a disclaimer. We can look at the 9 if that would be
Oh, no, it's fine.
appropriate for everyone.
Do you guys know?
I think it's up
So
to them
Te
to-
Take Matutaki is 7, so on the Kingatanga it's 7, so Tainui is 7.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
do 7.
or 7.
Noi te waki o Matariki. Nera, te waki o Matariki.
I'd just like to say thanks, Heather, for that. I think it's a great opportunity to tell a story, encourage te reo, and build a greater understanding of what Matariki actually means, because I think it's a beautiful piece of work to celebrate and to understand. I think that's the biggest thing, is to build understanding. So I guess you'd be keen if there's any other further input.
Absolutely.
We'd like to support you in this.
Threw it together a little bit last minute this year, but the plan going forward is to have this as our July-based reading challenge and school holiday activities going forward. And part of our activities, I'm looking to link and direct people to participate in community celebrations as they come up. I think last year Ngāti Tumutumu had, so if we've got celebrations this year, I'm more than happy to include that as an activity for the reading challenge participants to be part of for any community events or activities going on around the district. Basically, our plan is to show that the libraries have some information, but send people to the places where they can discover more and continue on their lifelong learning journey. And then the story walks. So in Matamata, Ezra Campbell is connecting us with the Kohanga Reo that borders on Swap Park. So we're looking to do a partnership of artwork. We've got the funding and we're making it a community project. In Morrinsville, the Morrinsville Museum, I believe, have been talking to some people at Ngāti Hoa.
Yes.
About sharing some stories about the history.
We're telling the story of our iwi, our hapu of Morrinsville, Ngāti Werewere and Ngāti Hoa. So that,
Yeah, so Morrinsville is a double-sided walk. So one way you'll go along and read the pages of a story, and then the other way, when you walk along, you'll go along and read the story from the history of
different story as we go along.
Yeah.
Quite exciting, really. Yeah.
And there's scope in Matamata to do the same. So far we've got their Ana Moa e Hoa, Tua Kore e Moa e Hoa is going to be the story walk going up next week. We don't have anything for the backside yet. So if there was potential for another history interpretation stories, we can do that. In Tiaraha, it's gone through a lot of vandalism. So we've just paused on any partnerships there. But we still have funding to put something in Tiaraha if we need to. Primarily, I'm looking at partnerships with community groups where providing some money and the resources, and then the community groups bring together and take ownership of the project going forward.
And it's a te reo.
Yeah, so all the storybooks that we chose are books that have been written in English and te reo. I'm looking at 3 stories a year from publishers like Scholastic, Huia, there's a few others in New Zealand that make sure that their stories are bilingual. And then 1 a year will be written by children in the community. So they'll have a panel each to write a story from the local kura, schools, ECD, college.
The only thing is with the Riverwalk story, we're only allowed 120 words.
No, I think a few of them spread over a couple of panels. We're still finalising the design to tell as much as we can.
Okay, thank you, Laura. Any other part-time, Laura?
Heather.
Thank you. Someone approve the content of the Matariki Reading Challenge for accuracy. And This one is,
Yeah.
and the information on the story walk is shared with potential partners. So if so, a mover, please. I'll move. Seconder?
Yeah.
Joe? All those in favour say aye. Contrary, carried. Thank you, Laura. Lastly, 8.4 and Erin. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is really just a very short but friendly invitation to complete the Manawhenua Forum Unsatisfaction Survey. So thank you to all of those who've already provided that feedback. This forms part of what's reported in the report, so it's really great to have it from you. So it has been sent to you digitally, but we've also got a copy there at the end of your agenda. So really welcome you to provide that feedback.
We've I think just have received the forms and just want to. Are there any questions of Erin? You're always chasing these forms, aren't you? Yeah. No, we've got them here in you've got them all. You can do it online. Yep. So I just there's no questions that the survey circulated and completed by Te Manawhenua Forum or Matamata-Piako members who have not already completed it electronically. So I have a mover. Rangi Tiona, seconder. Gary, all those in favour say aye. Aye. Contrary, carried. 8.5, the freedom camping bylaw. Who have we here?
I haven't written it down.
It's quite interesting.
That's good. Can I katoa? Sorry. I practiced on the back quietly under my breath. I messed it up. Thank you for your time this morning. I'm here today to talk to you about the proposed freedom camping bylaw that is currently under development. You may recall I was a talking head on the screen at your last meeting where I first introduced the bylaw to you. We've been busy since then driving around the district and having a peek at all the sites and doing a whole lot of the behind the scenes background work. So we bring to you today a update as well as some key sites that we'd like, I guess, to have an initial discussion with you about. You'll see on the recommendations that we are interested in going more widely to touch on and receive feedback from iwi hapu and whānau in the area to see what they think about freedom camping in the district generally, as well as on these 16 sites that we've identified. Now, these 16 sites, these aren't sites that we're thinking necessarily one way or the other, whether freedom camping should or shouldn't be either prohibited, restricted or permitted. We've just identified these sites as being hotspots, so areas where we think that there's going to be some conversation within the community. There might be some different opinions of what should happen. There might be a particular concern about an area. And so we're essentially wanting to guide the feedback to the areas where we think we are going to get some kōrero, just to help us do the data analysis more effectively rather than just kind of receiving a whole lot of brain dump. So that's the intention behind the sites that we've listed and attached the survey as well. So we're interested to see what you think about those sites, see if there's any that maybe shouldn't be there, or conversely, if we've missed off a site that you think we should be seeking specific feedback on. So yeah, interested in your thoughts.
Any questions? The aerodrome, do you have much people going there to the aerodrome and was parking up?
I don't have that particular data in front of me, sorry, but I believe that that is a area, we've included that just because there's I guess some differences in opinion that what maybe should or shouldn't happen. I believe that the gate is sometimes closed, which solves any problems. Maybe another can help me out with that.
Yeah, just on the airfield aerodrome, we're actually putting a new gate on.
Right. Oh, that's maybe what I was thinking. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's the intention of that gate to prevent casual access to that area.
Yeah.
So it would only be users of that space that would be able to enter. So when is that gate likely to be installed?
Sharon's working on it, but I don't know. Sharon, but we've already had people going in and out of there.
Yes, yeah, and I mean that's exactly why we are including that site in this. We know that that's going to generate some discussion, but that's really helpful information to know. Thank you.
Yeah, and just Hall's Bush.
Yes,
we are planning to increase the bush.
Yes, yeah.
So there probably won't be any place to camp unless they're going under the trees.
Right. So is that the entire, I guess, roadside as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not very good there anyway.
No,
It's very shaded, isn't it?
Quite
Yeah,
lucky there for that. Yeah.
you get cars go there and have a lot of skid.
That's why I like it.
Well, we're going to put more trees out there.
Joe?
My first question was going to be, is this the first time that these sites have come to iwi? Yes. And I would hope that these sorts of things would come to iwi directly in the future because of these sorts of conversations that can happen. Mm-hmm. Yes, I think that there does need to be a bit of a conversation, like you've got some wāhi tapu down here for Taupo, for example, that are not acknowledged as wāhi tapu. So it'd be good to go to iwi with these and have that conversation on those specific sites, and then issues can be raised directly. Absolutely, and that's why we've made this survey to. This is the first time we're having a conversation with anyone outside of council staff. So yeah, but this is the first step. I just think the first step should be go to iwi first rather than to the Manawhenua forum table. Okay, thank you for that.
Anyone else?
I'm just looking at the council car park. That's a big.
Yes.
That's interesting.
Another question, sorry, is who is going to and how is council intending on managing this? Because there is a freedom camping, for example, here in Taupo in the library car park that has become an issue. So what's the plan in terms of managing that going forward? Are you speaking from an enforcement point of view? Anything like what's council going to do to ensure that the bylaws are being adhered to? And like I'm not sure if you're aware of the one in Taupo here, but that's had wider issues and a long-term effect of someone who's been there for more than half a year. Yes, yeah, and the freedom camping legislation, which was before the House just last week, so it's very fresh. There's some changes coming, so we're kind of on the cusp of some change. So it's quite good timing for this bylaw because we can take advantage of that change and bring the new legislation through. But it's very specific in what it does and doesn't consider to be freedom camping, and the situation that you're describing is explicitly not freedom camping, so that would be able to be dealt with in another forum. So I think the situation that you were speaking of, there was some trespass notices put in place, I believe. Am I thinking of that? Heck no. So it's sort of outside the scope of the freedom camping bylaw. The freedom camping bylaw is concerned about people who are legitimate freedom campers, and in that same breath, it explicitly excludes people who are homeless. So someone who is living in their vehicle because they do not have a place to live, a safe place to live, that would be something that would be dealt with in a more social way rather than it being a fine scenario. So what I think council is going to be turning their mind to is they go through their long-term planning process is whether or not they might like to look at increase resources, increase enforcement officers if they're wanting to raise, I guess, the level of service of, how much they want to be enforcing. I know that some councils go on a more of a complaints basis. They use the bylaw as a bit of a backstop to address any of those, really big concerns. But for the rest of the time, the sort of self-manages the signs up where, directing people where and where not to camp. If people disobey those signs, then it's, council can respond.
We sell. I guess it's the enforcement is how is it enforced? Because bylaws generally don't. They're like a wet bus ticket in some ways, aren't they?
Yeah. Yes.
It's not. It's a bylaw. It's not a law.
Some bylaws, I'm it's very unfortunate. It's a bit of a fish and chip legislation. However, where we've got a bit of a advantage in this bylaw is that there is some really specific instant regulatory tools that council staff will be able to take, and part of the new regulatory regime that the new legislation is bringing through is that it actually provides council with a more tiered system to fines, because currently there's just the one fine, whereas now they've got maybe some smaller fines for sort of more low level breaches of the bylaw, right up to, if someone's done some significant damage to a site, they can impose a heavier fine. So it gives council much more teeth in enforcing this bylaw, which is a breath of fresh air. So that we have. Just another question. So you've got a fine system, yes, which is fining people can be found and pay fines, yes. So is there a plan, like the enforcement of ensuring that the place, and does council have council allocated budget to manage these, because they can become a problem? And I'm asking this specifically because I can see a wāhi tapu on here, and if that's desecrated more and more, that becomes an issue for us. Mm-hmm. So what's council going to do when they get a complaint from me to say get down there and clean it up? Where's the allocation of the budget to ensure that these things can happen? Fines are only one way. I don't think they're very effective. When you're freedom campers, that's why you're freedom campers, when you move, you're transient. Yeah, and I definitely hear that, and that's something that has been a major criticism of the current law. And so what MB, I believe, is putting in place is a national database that council staff will have access to. So they'll be able to see the history of that vehicle, whether or not they've been infringed in other areas. They'll have the contact name of the owner. They'll be able to send fines via email. Previously, they had to send them in the post, and you can imagine trying to find a postal address for a tourist. It is just impossible. Yeah. So I think this. I'm quite optimistic with the changes that have happened. It seems like council staff have really been listened to through this process. I don't know whether you recall the Freedom Camping Act 2011 was brought through as a direct response to the Rugby World Cup. So they did miss some things. I think it was sort of hastily finished up. So this amendment has addressed a lot of those concerns with enforcement. But to fetch your point, or your question around council making the discussion to allocate budget, that is something that I believe is yet to happen. And what I imagine is they'll be guided by the feedback that we received through the development of this bylaw. But I think on balance, it's appropriate to still have a bylaw, so then at least council can then make a decision about what the services are, therefore enforcing the bylaw.
Yes, so to add that, it'll go in the long-term plan discussion because we have no budget for it at this point in time. So that's quite timely with the LTP, I think.
It's most likely it was planned that way. Did anyone have any, I guess, feedback about any of the sites? It seems like the sites that we've got are the right ones, because they're the ones that we want to get the right kind of feedback on. In the previous meeting, the forum indicated that you would be keen to spread the information through to your networks. Is that still an appropriate way forward for this? So we will finalise the survey, so it'll just be a link that you can forward around to anyone that you feel is appropriate to send to, and we will have that open as long as we can, right up until the bylaw is drafted and ready to go to council for their consideration. I did raise the issue of going to each of the iwi to make sure the corridor is that we can have that conversation around the appropriateness or not of the sites. I think that needs to happen outside of what I've said. Okay.
So do this very first before you release the survey presentation.
No, I think that you just need to have a conversation with iwi. Would it be appropriate to release the survey to help us to help inform those conversations? Would you prefer that we hold back? I don't know. I wondered, thought of that. I haven't thought this through because what I'm thinking is if I'm objecting to a site quite strongly, would you want to share that information? So I haven't thought this through. I'm just sort of having that conversation.
She's just giving a moan. No, but you're right though. So if Jill's looking through that list and there's one that they vehemently oppose, then there's no point talking to community yet if that's going to be taken out.
I mean, you can. I'm not. So I'd say that the majority of the ones listed here will have some form of prohibition or restriction based on what we already understand. We are able to prohibit or restrict under the Act based on the three criteria on that front page of the report to protect the area, which includes protecting any cultural significance, as well as the physical area, protecting the health and safety of people who may visit the area. So that's, for example, if it's a really busy area near a school, if it's a busy car park with lots of traffic there, traffic movements, or thirdly to protect access to the area. So that's maybe if the car parks are really narrow and parking a friend camping vehicle, and you would just simply block it for the users. So those are the criteria that we use. We can't imagine up issues. We know a lot of things about these areas just because by nature of council's activities, but especially to make sure that we've got a really strong case for prohibition when we draft the bylaw. We're really wanting to make sure that we've got the areas that are wāhi tapu. We want to include that in the draft. We don't want to go out with the draft bylaw for public consultation with those areas missing. And so we're hoping that the survey will shake out any that we've maybe missed. But again, as I said at the beginning, these sites are the sites that we believe are going to generate some discussion, which is why they're there. But they're likely to require some level of protection.
So is there a process for adding sites to a prohibition list, because the problems can shift from one to another?
Yes.
And I'd be loath to say, we're worried about this site, want you to prohibit it. Everybody goes, oh, I never even thought of that one. Just keep quiet, keep your head down below the parapet for some of these ones. But then if it should become an issue, then is there a process?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So council's able to amend the bylaw at any stage, but as it will be a new bylaw, it will be up for review in 5 years. So it's quite a sort of short time frame. So within that time frame, council will really any issues that, you know, unintended consequential issues will be very much, they'll be aware of them by then. They could make a minor amendment to include a site. They probably just need to go out with some targeted consultation. They don't need to do the full-blown special consulting procedure for adding a single site, I would say. But again, they'd need to assess the significance of the decision at the time. Yeah, once the bylaw is adopted, it's reasonably set in stone, but it's not the end, not sort of impossible to undo. The important thing, I guess, to note is that the Act is really explicit in that it's a permissive regime. So free camping is allowed everywhere, except the areas that council explicitly prohibits, which is why it's so important that we make sure we don't miss any sites.
Okay. Any other further questions? If not, the recommendations that we're going to put forward is that Manawhenua Forum receive the information. 2, the Manawhenua Forum provide feedback on the information contained within this report and attachments to inform the drafting of a new freedom camping bylaw. And 3, the Manawhenua Forum distributes the pre-consultation material to their networks of iwi, hapu and whānau and invite them to provide feedback once finalised. Mover, please. Rangi Tionga, seconder.
Is it, are you wanting to change the order of that consults?
Change what?
I just have the question just to understand with contacting the iwi first before the distribution, just to make sure that there's the sites. It doesn't have to take a lot of time, but I think it's just important to touch base. Maybe. I don't know. I'm just asking a question here.
Not all iwi has an issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm okay with
You're okay.
the list as it is, but yeah, if other iwi want to meet with you before that,
Yeah.
I'm happy to wait. Yeah,
It doesn't have to affect this.
Cool. Yeah, well, that's good. I just wanted to understand that. Thank you.
Rangi Tionga, seconder, please.
oh, I can see.
Thank you, Hinarami. All those in favour say aye. Contrary. Carry.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
8.6, the Manawhenua Forum Work Programme hearing.
So this is, I guess, another shorter item for me, but before I go into that, I just wanted to acknowledge Jill suggested that we have a copy of the survey available for you, so we'll distribute that to you shortly. So thank you for that lovely suggestion. This item is really just to provide you with an update on the work programme. You'll note that following our discussion for our last hui that we have removed the reform update for you, so happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Gary?
Just a question how we're going to be factoring in some of the discussions that have been raised at workshops going forward.
Really, Gary, it's a really good question. One thing that we could do as well is have like a bit of an action schedule as well that we could perhaps attach, so that there's any matters arising, we can also respond to those, if that'll be helpful. Certainly in governance roles I've had previously, I've done it at different levels of committees and things as well. So very happy for us to put that forward if that would be helpful. I think it would provide a good track of where we're at and keep those conversations going as well. So appreciate that comment.
Any questions on there? Work program? It's an update. Joe?
I can see our work program for 23. I know we had a workshop a little while ago and we talked about EB aspirations.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we fit within that the work plan, working on those EB aspirations?
I think that's a really great question. So this afternoon, Twitty and I will continue those EB aspiration conversations, and I'd be really keen to have an understanding as to how you might see that incorporated through, because again, I think it's really important to, kind of have those things married up and have it quite visible as well, so we can keep on track with where things are heading and make sure they go in that direction. So really good to have that conversation on that matter as well.
You happy with that, Joe?
So just to note that this is a workable work plan then, because we don't have the corridor that we talked about at that workshop within this.
So, sorry, just building on that question and my earlier questions, is how we workshop through to start to weave our aspirations into the annual plan and work plan for the whole. Yeah.
If there's no further questions of Erin, I'll move that the recommendation, the work program update be received. Gary, seconder. Andrea, all those in favour? Contrary, carried. Thank you. We're just going to Tuatani, if we can, the iwi aspiration workshop, we'll bring it up here. We've got a bit of time.
He just needs to set up the room. So what we can do is I can take you guys through the online portal.
Oh, okay.
While we do that and show everyone how we do that, and then we can go into lunch.
Okay. Let's do that now. What, she's going to go through the online portal. Okay.
Did everyone get my email about logging into the online knowledge portal and stuff? I know it's not going to apply to everyone, but I thought I'd show everyone how it's going to work and stuff like that as well.
Yes, please.
Yeah. Just sure.
Wi-Fi password.
Wi-Fi password. Oops. Go to